We're really pleased to have Nadine with us today. She's an executive recruiter and job coach. Her previous work experience includes management and senior management roles in marketing, business development, economic development, and corporate responsibility, and community relations with organizations such as Georgia Department of Labor, APS Healthcare, St. Joseph's Health System. Nadine has served as a board member with the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce and volunteers with other chambers and nonprofit boards. Nadine has a BA from the State University of New York at Binghamton and an MSA from Central Michigan University in Administration. She holds a Global Career Development Facilitator certification from the Center for Credentialing and Education, Silver Certificate in Resume Writing, and is a certified EQ coach through the Adele Leadership Institute. So Nadine, I'll let you fill in the rest of the blanks and you can take it away.
Wonderful. All right. Is my screen good?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I'm so excited to be here to share some insights from a recruiter's perspective. It's probably one of my favorite things to do in recruiting is do candidate preparation. And with all the candidates that go before one of our clients, we like to do a pretty in-depth candidate preparation. Why? Because it's always that one thing that you don't tell the candidate, like, don't ever say anything negative about a former employer. Situations like that. So you want to make sure that they don't diss their former employer. You go through the whole list of things that you don't do. And then, of course, when you get feedback, sometimes they'll say, yeah, they asked me a question about salary, to executive vice president, so you just never know what someone's going to do. So we like to spend the time up front in preparing our candidates, and we want to make sure that they have the greatest interview of their lives. And so let's go into a little bit. All right. So what I'd like to be able to cover are basically what your job is in an interview. And so everyone has a role. So what is your job in the interview? Get to know, like, and trust, which is basically the foundation for any interview. The foundation basically of the things that are essential, and then the process. So getting to know you and getting to know them. I loved how Richard shared, you've got to do your research. So share something personal. It's important for people to get to know you and have a conversation. You don't want it to be too personal, but I always like to kind of help build a story of why you are who you are. Why did I go into accounting? Because I was good with numbers, and it was just really easy for me. And then you could say, and then I felt like I really needed to learn more. So I went back for my master's degree. And then I started building this story, potentially talk a little bit about, well, I ran track and field in high school, or I was in a dance troupe, things that help create this story of not just Nadine Walley on paper, but Nadine Walley, that she's got this family in New York. She has a dog, just little things that help create someone to get to know me, potentially decisions that I made. And then I always like to make sure that people share why they changed jobs. And when I say why they changed jobs, we always like to make sure that if a candidate got pulled from another company because they worked with someone because of their strong work ethic, make sure that they share that information, not just that I left the company and started working for another company. It's important to have referability. And so if you actually got recruited from a former boss or someone coworker, that's a really positive thing. At Handler, we have basically 12 factors that contribute to an excellent candidate. And one of them is that career referability. So let's go into the like zone. It's a two-way street. We want to make sure that you're likable, but do you like the person who's interviewing you? And so when Richard and Dave shared the story of this person just kept talking, I don't know if I would like working for someone like that. And early on, we've all made mistakes of like, I just need to get a job. But thinking about it, you probably didn't stay very long because it wasn't the right fit. And we always want to make sure that it is the right fit. And so it's a two-way street. Ask insightful questions of tell me a little bit more about, and I'm talking about as a candidate, tell me a little bit more about why you like working here. I like some of the questions that Richard talked about is, it's important to really get to know your interviewer. And then smile. And so we're going to talk in the next slide a little bit more about the virtual interview and how important it is to smile all the time. And so it's every once in a while, you got to pinch yourself and smile because that's how you're connecting with the computer. And so if you're just talking like this, it's almost like every once in a while, you got to set yourself and check yourself to be able to smile. So with this know, like, and trust, you are trying to build that trust level. And I'd love everyone to go into the chat box and, let me know, does trust start in the interview? Do you think, when does trust actually start? So go into the chat box and there we go. Tell me when you think trust starts. And of course, I got a lot of recruiters on here. So yes, before the interview with follow-up, the first interaction with someone at the company, the first communication on booking stage. Okay, so we like to make sure that trust starts when we make the first phone call. So I make the first phone call with my candidate and they're not very nice to me. And I will make a note in our ATS or in our CRM system to say, this person wasn't very kind and all they talked about was money. Trust starts when you call them and they call you back right away. Oh, or I'm so sorry I missed your call. Thank you for calling me. It's okay if you're not interested in moving at this time, but you certainly do show a lot when you don't call somebody back or you start ghosting them. And recruiters know that. They have been ghosted by many candidates. So one of the things that we always encourage people is to be confident and watch your ums and your ahs and your ands and your so's. The number one start of a sentence when somebody asks a question is so, and it really gives people the opportunity to think about what they want to say. But if they just breathed in and thought about the question and then just go for it. So here I did it again. You catch yourself doing it and you're like, oh my goodness. With Toastmasters, that is a great way to watch your speech. You don't use a lot of ums, you don't use a lot of ands, or you don't look up in the air and try to find the word. Toastmasters really can help you, and it can help you on a virtual screen too. There are really great things that you can do on the screen, like put notes all around the computer, all around where the camera is. This is the foundation of any interview, sharing your achievement stories. And I like to call them STAR stories. Maybe some people call them PAR or SOAR or SAR. But STAR stories are a situation or task, the action you took, and the results. And I always say, tie it with a little bow on the top. This is where you can integrate some of your soft skills. And the soft skills are communication, teamwork, critical thinking, adaptability, and creativity. And when someone asks you a question, you can try to integrate some of your teamwork abilities or your communication abilities in that. And I like to have my candidates answer every question with a STAR story. And it's kind of weird when you think about it, but if somebody asks you a question, do you have a master's degree? Yes, I have my master's degree. And you go into greater detail. You know, I went to, the University of XYZ, and I got my master's, and I loved learning. And that really allowed me to be able to take my CPA, and it's really helped my career. You wouldn't want to just say, yes, I have my master's degree. You want to answer with more detail, and that STAR format really helps. And then be grateful, be kind, be authentic, and be yourself. And that's the hardest thing to do on a screen. So I always feel like it's every once in a while, you got to check yourself. You got to get relaxed a little bit, take a deep breath, breathe in rather than say filler words like and mock interviews. So Richard offered to do some, a little help. I think that's so important to be able to watch your ums and your ands. And if that's a problem for you, Richard offered to do a free 15-minute session. I strongly encourage you to do that. So we were going to do a breakout session, but we don't have that here on our screen. So I'd like to have open up the lines and have everyone think about what was the one thing you did or observed in an interview that provided an advantage. And let me stop sharing my screen because I want to open it up to conversation. So if you're interested in sharing the one thing that you feel gave you an interview advantage.
Well, I'll just I'm going to repeat what I said before. I got a warm introduction and recommendation to the founder of the company by an established employee who had high credibility. I didn't even have to interview.
Right.
So if there's one thing that's an advantage to me, that's it. That's my number one.
Well, and it's interesting, Richard, that you say that because oftentimes I see candidates going before the CEO. They might have the hiring manager, but they go before the CEO. And the whole idea behind that, I believe, is that the CEO is supposed to seal the deal, not approve the candidate. Right? Like, you want to work for this company? Let me tell you how great this company is. And we are going to take this company to the next level. That's the kind of interview that I want to have with the CEO, not to vet me out to see if it's a good candidate. Because if that's part of the process, then there's something wrong with the organization. That's how I feel anyway.
At that point in my career, I was a lot younger.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I didn't know what was going on.
Yes.
I just went with the flow. And you're right. That founder of that company was really pitching the company to me.
Yes. Yes.
Nadine, it's been my observation that, both in my corporate background, most interviewers have not been trained to conduct an interview. And it seems like it's even worse as you go up the line.
Yes.
So I really encourage candidates to be prepared to lead the interview themselves. And one of the best methods that I've seen is to, prepare a one-page handout that just bullet points your key accomplishments in your career, things that you're really proud of that led to greater success, maybe the next job or a career change. that will pretty much put you in control. It's like the agenda, and who controls the agenda controls the meeting.
Absolutely. And I always feel like a leave behind is important, but sometimes it could be a little bit too much. So knowing who you're giving it to, if you give it to the wrong person, it might be off-putting. Kind of like what Richard was saying, that he had overconfidence and he just kind of threw up all over the interviewer and realized halfway through. And I've done that before. I've have, handouts that I've created because I have a marketing background and I want to show them all the great things. And they're like, oh, no, I'm not ready for that. It's almost like when someone gives you their references and here's my references. I never asked you for your references. You're not there yet. So it's a cadence of an interview that you need to make sure that you're careful of. But I do love a one-page, all the achievement stories and broken up into different segments. You say you're good at strategic planning. These are my strategic planning bullet points. You say you're good at finance and accounting. These are some of the things I've done. And break it up into 3 or 4 areas.
Nadine, you touched on handouts, and we'll shut up and let everybody else talk. But I had a VP of marketing I was coaching years ago, and I said, "What are you bringing to the interview?" And he said, "I've got this ketchup bottle and a 72-page PowerPoint deck." And we had a long conversation about how he was going to use the ketchup bottle and the 72-page PowerPoint deck.
Wow.
He knew how to use them, though. And I said, absolutely.
Good.
You know how to do it. You got a plan. Go for it.
Normally a 72-page would be a little bit too much, but,
Exactly.
hey, at least he proved himself.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other, just things they did in an interview or that they've observed that you thought, wow, I've got to use that you want to share with the rest of the group so that we can all benefit from that?
I'd say one of the things that I've found success with is certainly engaging around what that person's vision is for the company or for the role or for their department. Understanding, asking questions and being curious about, what direction they're moving in, and then how the role that you're discussing plays into achieving that. So I think that's just really tying your strengths and what you're bringing to the role directly to the vision and the direction that they're moving in.
Absolutely. And I think that I like to coach people in whenever you ask a question, you always have to have the answer. So for example, and many of these executives here know this, is that, having a 30, 60, 90-day plan. One question that I like to ask in an interview at the very end, after you've met with every single person, and this is kind of like the seal the deal question. I met with Joe and, he was wonderful. I met with your CEO and this was really, really a wonderful company. And I really want to work here. What would be what would you want me to accomplish within the first 60 days so that you knew that you made a good decision in hiring me? It's already getting that mindset of, I hired you, you've got that 30, 60, 90-day plan. But meanwhile, I have my 30, 60, 90-day plan with me so that you know that I've been thinking about it. And, whether it's on how you onboard, how you interact, and how you start with the, low-hanging fruit within those first 90 days, thinking about this is what I want to do for your company, but what's your perspective? And then after they answer that question, you can give them I have a 30, 60, 90-day plan that I was going to send you. If you're on a virtual screen, you can't give it to them, right, Richard? So you need to be able to say, hey, listen, I have this great document that I would love to share with you. I'm going to pop it over in the mail, but it's my 30, 60, 90-day plan, and it goes into these 3 areas. Perhaps you can do something like that. Or you could have it on your screen and ready to share. I know this is going to just take maybe 3 minutes, but here, let me share my screen. I want to show you that I put together this presentation or this document for you. Don't want to say presentation because that's a little bit maybe too much, but I put together this document. May I share my screen? And just go ahead and do it, you know, and say, I can pop this over to you. I've been in interviews where they say, oh, you're the one who had the package. You know, you were the one who had the handouts. And then after I had the handouts, they said, can you email that to me? Because I want to share that with my board. It's about having a good plan and having some backup that you really thought about the interview.
At what point in the process would you share that plan with the hiring manager?
With the hiring manager, yes, you could.
Right. So the prior interviews, you wouldn't go that far. You would wait until you get to the hiring manager.
Not with a human resource person.
Right.
No, I would definitely not. But you could share. Yeah, it goes over their head. They're like, and I'm going to tell you, you don't do it because I have done it. So I like Richard. He's very vulnerable. He's like, hey, look at, this is what I did and it didn't work. I'm like that too. I tried that. And after I did it, I realized, oh my gosh, no, this is not the right person. You've got to feel it. You have it in your portfolio ready to give. But more than likely in this virtual environment, you are going to be able to meet the hiring manager. And I encourage you to be able to meet face to face. You know, with the pandemic and this disruption, it's terrible, but I think it's so important for you to actually meet the hiring person, whether you arrange to meet with them outside or in the office. And most companies now that I'm working with are inviting the candidate in. And that's perfectly fine, but up to that point. So it's got to be like, go through virtual interview after virtual interview, and then you go and meet with the hiring manager or the CEO.
So I do have a question, Nadine. What are some tools that you use to prepare for your 30 or 90-day plan that you are recommending could be shared?
Well, I have a document. I'd be happy to share it with you, but it's basically, 3 different segments: 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. 30 days, learning a little bit more about the company, start with the low-hanging fruit, depending on what type of role you have. You can take this basic idea and translate it into pretty much any organization. So I can actually probably attach it after I'm finished speaking here, but it's just kind of get that framework of success. I want to think about, how am I going to be successful at your company? And so, initially I've got to meet the team, and I've got to figure out the collateral organizations or collateral departments that I need to meet with, and then start meeting to be able to identify what are going to be the big wins, and then moving on to that next level, and then evaluating. So you are constantly thinking about the future and what you're going to achieve within those 90 days. So important. Right.
Yeah, if you could share it, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. I should be able to pop it in there.
If not, you could send it to Jim. He's our central resource, and he'd get it out to everybody.
Right. And it's not something that you should copy. It's something that you need to create on your own, to say, okay, this looks like a great framework, but I need to make it my own and integrate some things in there. Very good. Well, let's move on to optimizing our platform. And this is basically the gist of the presentation here. All right. Ensuring that your camera is at eye level. I don't know how many times I have people talking to me like this or like this. I had a CEO interview a candidate, and all he saw was the person's face. Now with Teams, sometimes the camera is very different. And so it is okay if you ask, is my screen okay, when you're in an interview? I think that's perfectly fine, because you want to make sure that that they can see you, that you're looking right at the camera. In fact, I have a little sticky note here that makes me look every once in a while at the camera. Now, some computer screens, if you're just looking at the screen, you're looking at the camera. So that is perfectly okay right there. And then placing the light in front of you rather than behind you. So I'm going to do, I did just let someone in, by the way, if you heard that little beep. So you can see I actually have a ring light, one of those circle lights, and it's above me. And oftentimes I wear glasses. And you want to make sure that your glasses don't show the ring light. I've seen so many people wear the ring lights like this. Now, if I tilt my head up like this, you might be able to see my ring light, right? You don't want to do that. So position your ring light so that you can't see it. Adjusting the camera so that you can see just a little bit of your shoulders, and having a really good view. I always like to say just a tiny little bit above your head. And so if you don't mind me being a little critical, I am going to focus on Carla. Carla, may I focus on you?
Certainly.
Okay. So I'm looking at your screen. Let me see if I can. Let's see, I was going to spotlight to everyone. Now I can't even see her. So, all right. So you've got a lot of really great white space, which is good, but there's nothing of interest behind you. And some people say that's perfectly fine, but what I'd like to see is a little bit more of you. So you've got a lot of white space. So just a little bit closer maybe to the screen would be good. And then if you can get your shoulders. So maybe you do need to be, yes. There you go. So looking at those kind of things, seeing a little bit of your shoulders, I think is great. All right, let me spotlight you.
Thanks for doing that, because this would be where I would be having my interviews, and now I have an idea.
Yes. And so that is so important to be able to have that visual screen. Having a professional background. I've seen people where they've had toothpaste and toothbrush in the background. I'm like, can you please remove the toothpaste, right? And this is an executive. I'm not talking about just anyone. So they're not just oblivious to their backgrounds. And so I think it's important to make sure that you clean out the things that you don't want people to see. And then testing your audio quality. Now, I did have someone ask me, what are you using? And I actually was using my computer before, and people would say to me, you sound like there's an airplane coming through the screen right now. So I had to get an external audio, and I am going to tell you what that is. Let's see if I can do that. It's gonna have to get my glasses on for that. So it's an ATR 2100X. And it looks like this. ATR 2100X. And I'm telling you, it's worth the money because you want to make sure that people can hear you clearly. And I think it's an important thing to do. Do you want to just let's do a quick audio check on everyone. Richard Kirby, can you say, hello, I'm Richard Kirby.
Hello, I'm Richard Kirby.
Okay.
Wow. Hold on.
Very
Let's try that again. Hello, I'm Richard Kirby.
Okay, Laura. Laura, can you take yourself off mute?
Hello, I'm Laura Butcher.
Yeah, that was good. Good. Carla?
Good morning. I'm Carla Gilpin.
Carla, you are coming in very clear. Very, very clear. And then we're going to go down to Dave.
Good morning. I'm Dave Romer.
I like Dave. Dave's good. Joe Faraka.
Good morning, Joe Faraka.
Okay, good. Gary Payne.
Hey, good morning, Gary Payne.
Okay. And then we have Stan.
Hello, I'm bridging the IT gaps.
Yes. All right, Stan. And then Doug Walker.
Morning, Doug Walker here.
All right. So did you notice there was a little difference in some of the audios for some people? Right? So Stan, I'm just going to say that I don't know if it's your internet, but it's not as clear as we would like it to be. So you might want to do a little work on the background on that just to make sure that you have a nice, clear sound. And it's really worth the money. If you're spending a lot of time on Zoom or on all of these video platforms, you want to make sure someone can hear you. And even so if all else fails too, I'm just going to tell you, you can always use your iPhone for any of those conference calls, and that would work too. Let's go talk about eye contact. I talked a little bit about potentially looking into the camera, and sometimes that can be super impactful. It's hard to look into the camera though, but sometimes if I'm trying to make a point, I'm going to look right into that camera. And did you see the difference there? So I think it's important to be able to look into the camera every once in a while. And while we're doing it, I'm going to stop share and I'm going to look. All right. Doug, you look great. Are you looking into the camera right now? Your camera looks like it's probably center screen. Gary, you've got great presence. I like the fact that your background, your light is closed or your shades are closed because otherwise that might be too much light. Dave's got his fun background.
Rid of it.
Yeah. Can you look into the camera?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking.
Okay. That's good. So yes. And look into your screen. So if you're looking at the screen, it looks like you're looking down a little bit, but I think it's okay. It's fine and spot on. How about Sten? Sten, you look good. You're looking at the camera. Let's go to Carla. Carla, can you look right into the camera? See, there's a difference. I like that. Every once in a while, if you can look in the camera and just to prove your point. Joe, are you looking in the camera right now, Joe? Yes. Okay. You could see. That's good. Good presence right there. May I give you a suggestion? Okay. So you're crossing your arms and you're shutting down. All right. So thinking about presence is many different things. Good. Thank you. So just like when this means that you're closed to anything. And sometimes you could just be cold. Maybe tell your wife to turn the heat up. I know Joe, so I can say that. Jim Weber, you've got a lot of reflection in your eyeglasses, so you might want to work a little bit on that. There you go.
Well, you're a little blurry now, but I can see you.
Problem solved. Very good. Laura, you've got amazing presence. You look great. I even like some things in the background too. And then Richard, yes, you look good. You've got a right amount of space around you. So thank you everyone for allowing me to give you feedback on the screen because it is really very important. Let's move on to our last slide.
Nadine, I do have a quick question.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on just having a background you just described or having a virtual background?
One of the challenges with virtual backgrounds is the fact that sometimes you get a little blurry and you lose part of your head. And so it's important to be able to have clearly differentiated lines. Oh, look at Dave. He got rid of his background. Richard Kirby, you can turn those off here and sometimes in Zoom, like not allowing people to go to San Francisco for the day. But, but if you're interviewing and you have a virtual background, just make sure that you don't move your hands too much, right? See how Richard's moving his hand and it's disappearing? We can't even see the Coca-Cola or the Pepsi. So if you use your hands, it disappears a little bit. So think about that with some cameras, not all cameras. Now, Sten looks real good. He's got crisp colors. So the red, I think, really helps because it's very different than the yellow in the background. So think about the colors. We have a virtual background that we use sometimes at Handler. And I was always worried about using it with the dark because it's navy blue. And if I would just kind of blend in, it would be just this person with blonde hair, you know, just floating around. So just be mindful of that. Do a practice on your own. So let's move on to the next slide here. Sorry about that. Okay, so these are the must-do in the process. And Richard started out with this, and I'm going to finish. Research the interviewer and the company. It's so important to know something little. I recently was talking to someone, and they knew someone, and they were talking about all the hospitals that they had worked at. And I said, well, if your interviewer, if you've been in the hospital near them, that will help place it. So, for example, if I shared the fact that I worked for St. Joseph's Hospital of Atlanta and I'm in Atlanta, you want to make sure that that person can have the context of like what hospital, you know, oh yeah, I know St. Joseph's Hospital. I know Northside Hospital. Know why you want the job. And this is very important to know why you want the job, but also why they should not hire you. This is a new question that I'm asking people. So I want them to think about these trick questions because they happen. Why should I not hire you? Well, you should not hire me if you want someone who's going to work hard. It's kind of a flip. So you never know if you're going to get someone who's going to give you those kind of trick questions. And most people would say, why should they not hire me? And they start coming up with crazy things like, well, because, and then just you sit there and you can't even think of an answer. But think about it and flip the question. You should not hire me if you want someone who's going to work hard. You should not hire me if you want someone who focus on results. In fact, I focused on results and I achieved this, this, and this in this segment. So think about crazy questions that you might get asked. You know, a lot of times, like I can't even imagine how I would answer the question, what kind of animal are you? Right?
Sounded very backwards. Sorry for interrupting, but you said, you should not hire me if you want someone that works hard.
Yes, or whatever that is, right?
Yeah, but wouldn't you want someone that works hard?
Right, but don't hire me if you want me to work hard. If the must-haves for the role has to do with, and everyone seems a little perplexed, but it is like, so we need someone who has, 15, I'm looking at one of my jobs. We're going to hire someone who has, knowledge of internal auditing standards. We're looking for someone who is driven. Don't hire me because I'm driven. You know, I will produce results. If you don't want someone who produces results, then you shouldn't hire me.
Nadine, I remember once when I was interviewing to join PepsiCo that a little twist on that question, they asked me, what are your weaknesses? And I told him, well, you know, some people say that I'm expect too much and impatient. And his eyes lit up and I ended up getting the job.
He liked that.
Well, that was the Pepsi culture. You know, they demanded a lot and they, you know, weren't very tolerant or patient for people that didn't apply to that.
Well, that weakness question, you should always have an answer to, right? So I expect results and I always get what I want. But I've found, and so how do you work on the weakness thing? I always like to say it's an area that I'm continuously working on, not necessarily a weakness. So I communicate more so that people know the expectation. So it's not just I'm going to bulldoze and expect results. I communicate more. I develop the team. I check with them. Think about all the potential things that you can do so that it doesn't appear to be a weakness, but more of a strength and an area that you constantly are aware of and are working on. So let's go to using the STAR format. Use the STAR format for every question, STAR, PAR, POR, SAR, whatever you want to use. Keep all communication to less than 2 minutes. And I say that because oftentimes people are talking and they keep going on and on and on, and they never check with the interviewer. And if you're on a virtual screen, you might really lose the person. So if you go, I like to say even 1 minute, but 2 minutes, if you start telling your STAR story after 1 minute and you see the person just kind of leaning back and just going blah, is there anything more you'd like to know about that? Or hurry up and finish and say, is there anything more you'd like to know about that? And they're like, no, let's move on. You knew you probably lost him. Right?
Nadine?
Yes.
I had a friend, I was not coaching them, but I had a friend who worked on who was on a nuclear submarine for several years. And it gave me the idea of, in coaching people about responding crisply, is imagine he's in an interview and they say, oh, gee, I understand you were in a nuclear submarine. How do nuclear submarines work? Now, that person could talk for half an hour about how nuclear submarines work, but they have no idea how much information the interviewer wants to know.
Right.
So if you intentionally control your length of your responses, then the interviewer will come back and ask for what more detail if they want to know more detail.
Absolutely. I had a candidate once who he helped invent some new pineapple, but that's not the job that he was looking at. And it's on his resume that he, helped invent and bring this new pineapple to market. But he didn't want to talk about it too much, but it was kind of neat. So he had to control the situation because it's a fascinating story, but that's not what he was interviewing for. So he had to give a little information, but then say, but what I'd really like to share with you is the fact that this, so there comes a point in the interview that you do need to take control without making it seem like you're taking control, because you don't ever want the interviewer to think that they're not in charge. All right. So keeping it very clear and crisp with your STAR stories and all of your communication. Even walk me through your resume. They have your resume right there. You do not have to go into great detail. Talk about more of the transitions, maybe 1 or 2 things that you learned in that job, but try to get it within 2 minutes. And then share something personal, not too personal. Ask insightful questions. Never talk about compensation until they bring it up, or benefits, anything like that. Always ask for the job and then send a thank you note. And I always tell people, hey, we're in the South. You need to send a physical thank you note, whether there was a disruption or not. And you can also follow up with an email. And so I think it's important to send that thank you note. Does everybody send thank you notes? Yes, yes.
I did during COVID though. So how do you handle that now that people are working from home?
They're not necessarily all working from home. They'll eventually go into the office. So if you don't know if they're going into the office, I would recommend you say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I dropped a thank you note in the mail, but wanted to reiterate my interest in the role. Thank you so much for your time. Maybe 1 blurb about what you talked about. And I look forward to speaking with you soon. but it kind of balances it out because you don't know if they're going into the office. And if you do know, then just go ahead and send that thank you note. It's a little slow. So if they're going to be making, and you find out, always ask, what's the next step in the process? You have to ask that. And if the next step in the process is, well, we're going to make a decision in the next couple of days, you better do both. I think this is the situation. I often tell people sometimes less is better, but more is better on this one. Very good. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak to you about something that I'm extremely passionate about. I love interviewing from a recruiter perspective, but also from a coaching perspective to help people shine. So does anyone have any questions?
I have one more quick question, if you don't mind. So,
sure, Dave. When
you get to be seasoned, like I am.
No, you are not seasoned. Experienced.
Okay, experienced. I worry a little bit about how I dress. Should I or should I not wear a jacket? Because I tend to think that jackets make me look older. I don't know.
Well, you can always ask the human resource person what would be appropriate attire for this interview. And then I always say, just go maybe one up a little bit, right? So I had a situation where a candidate went in, wore a full suit. He was a mechanical engineer, and they felt like he was a little professorial, they said. Like he just looked really good. I just can't imagine him getting down in the grease and the dirt. Well, he wore the jacket to impress, but he's used to wearing collared shirts and that type of thing. So you could share that you wore the jacket to impress, but if the interviewer is wearing a colored golf shirt, maybe you could just take your jacket off and have that different view. But you are in an interview, and so you need to look good. But just make sure that your suit fits. That's one big thing. It's got to fit. It's got to be snug.
Thank you.
Yes. So it doesn't cost that much to get a little, but if it's in here, you don't have to worry about it so much. You can actually pull it back just to make sure it's nice and snug. But in person, it's got to look good. Any other questions?
I have one that I put in the chat as well. So if you're in a group interview, is it appropriate, or how do you ask one of the people what brought you to the company and or what do you like about working?
Sure. I like that question. And so I would be specific. So say I'm the one getting interviewed and I go, I find all of you very fascinating. Laura, I have a question for you. So you can be specific to that person, as the CEO, what brought you to the company? Or after she answers, you could say, and Joe, what do you like most about working at XYZ? But I would break it up a little bit. You can't ask every single person. If you got 6 people, that's just going to take too much time. So be specific. And we all know that human resource people are different than hiring managers, are different than the hiring manager's boss. So you have to understand, what is their driver? What do they need? Human resources is more on the culture fit, whereas the hiring manager is, can I get the job done? Do you get it? Do you want it? Do you have the capacity to do it? Whereas the CEO is this the right track for this candidate, for this department? We know that we need somebody who is going to can do all the things, but also take it to the next level. Is this person who's going to take it to the next level?
Thank you.
Very
That's
good.
Great. Hey, I appreciate all the tips on the video presentation. 2 questions. One is, is there any trick for eyeglass glare? I see that a lot when I'm looking in the camera and I have to tilt my head all over the place to get rid of it. So I played around with lighting, but it's still there no matter what I do.
Well, you certainly could make your screen a little bit less bright. And that might do something. Do I have a lot of glare in my glasses?
No, not really.
Okay, so I actually have low glare glasses for these particular ones. Yeah, Warby Parker, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And can you, what was the name of the microphone that you mentioned for the model?
It is ATR 2100X. It's a USB microphone.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, on this one, I have someone who's one of my speakers. I actually am the leader for Life Lessons Over Lunch, which we meet on Wednesdays. It's a job networking group. And we were meeting every Wednesday, and then we brought it in to Zoom. And the speaker had one of these microphones. I'm like, I want one of those microphones. Mine is so bad. Microphones are very important. If you don't have a microphone that works, especially if you're on Zoom, you can always call in too. But the problem is it has to be tied to that person.
Yeah, right.
So.
And Nadine, another question. Do you recommend getting a computer stand for your laptop so that you get the right proportion in your view?
I don't think you need a computer stand. I've got 5 books. So they just said, you know, but see, then I also have my computer keyboard. So my camera is up here on my laptop, and then I've got 2 screens over here. And so it's important to be able to have it at that level. I think it's a great level to have it, but it's books. Pretty cheap computer stand. Very good. All right. Well, I am going to turn it back over to Jim Weber.
Thank you, Nadine. That was an excellent presentation, very insightful. One point that I think is worth reinforcing is the use of stories to present yourself, especially your background and key accomplishments. People can relate to stories. They can relate to stories about yourself, stories about how you took on a difficult project and were successful. And if you get in the habit of telling or answering questions in a story format, keep it concise and to the point, don't ramble on. But that'll have so much more impact than if you just give a dry response without really developing the situation. So firm believer in the use of stories in an interview process.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. And I always tell people, make the story personal too. So you could say what you would have done in a situation, but if you use people's names. So I reported to Jim, and Jim and I, or Jim, we were talking about how we needed this project done. So I took the project on and I put together this team. And so this team included, and you don't have to use people's names, but the leader of marketing, the leader of this person. So it helps people understand it. That's what a story does, but you've got to make it believable. And, if you ever get that question, tell me a time when you developed one of your employees. Well, I had this employee, her name was Carla, and Carla was really good at what she did, but she just needed a little extra help, and I mentored her. You don't have to use last names, but it helps make it a little bit more of a story, and it has to show excitement. So use those star stories that show excitement. I often say, what's your most significant achievement? And it's blah. And I say, tell me another one. And they start telling this story and their eyes light up and it's really exciting. I'm like, that's the one you need to tell. Don't tell the flatliners. You got to have some enthusiasm and excitement when you're sharing your achievement stories.
Right. And the point about a story is it really supports the whole STAR concept in that it's not a theoretical answer that, well, gee, faced with that situation, I would do this, that, and the other. People don't want to hear theory. They want to hear, what you've actually done and how you've been successful. So, Any other questions for Nadine or anybody else on the call today? Going once? Going twice? Well, thank you all for attending today. You will be receiving an email from me with more information about great careers in the BENG. This presentation has been recorded. So with Nadine's permission, I will edit that and make it available to everybody that wants to review it again at your leisure. And Nadine, it can be a marketing tool, you know, for you to, you know, lead with what a great presenter you are. So
thank you.
And having said that, I look forward to seeing you all at the meeting next month when we'll have another professional recruiter presenting again, Carrie Cafaro. And if you all know Carrie, she's also awesome and very interesting presenter. So thank you all very much. Really happy that you attended today. Nadine, thank you so much for stepping in and doing such a great job of presenting some very interesting information.